don't know what to expect because the weather's so gorgeous and there's a game on TV and all of those good things. But I'm sure that it will be worth your coming and going to be an interesting afternoon. I want to introduce to you our Master of Ceremonies, who is Tom Wheeler. I'm sure you all know him, and I just heard he's a brand new grandpa. And a new baby.
You better clap. Thank you, Dee. I'm not going to have too much to say today. I'm going to just try to keep the ball rolling with our experts and our resource people. Everybody said that we would come casual tonight like a Cracker Barrel session, and so see my friend over here with the necktie on to make me feel bad.
Did it on purpose, John.
I think the people that we have that are going to be the resource and help answer some questions and field your questions today are probably people that you all know very well because they've been in the community for a long, long time. So I kind of like to introduce them and real quickly and have them come up and sit down. And I want you to all think about your questions, and because probably in the group out here we have resource people that may remember and know about some of the things that even our experts don't know. But our first guest is Louis Warehain. He represents the 5th generation Warehain that has lived in the community. I guess I hope I got the right ones. Great-great-great-grandfather.
Right.
In 1848 moved here, and his great-great-grandfather purchased the farm that you all know as the Wayside Farm up here on Waukegan Road. And I thought an interesting thing when I was talking to Louis, he said his great-great-grandfather purchased that farm from Indian Clark. He says was the first white settler in this whole area. So, and I believe the family, most of them over the years were farmers, weren't they, Louis?
Right.
And although Louis does many, many things very, very well, I think primarily your occupation for the majority of your life
I was
is
the
as a farmer.
last idiot to be farming.
Why don't you come up here and sit down and we'll let you talk to us. I think we're fortunate today to have quite a variety of backgrounds here today. The next person I'd like to introduce you to is Herman Lorenz, who I'm sure you all know. And Herman's family has the honor of being the oldest family-run business in the United States. He and his family started the business, and it wasn't the auto business at the time, but started the business back in 1842, and it's still operating today with he and his son. And I thought that was kind of interesting. His grandfather was the first mayor of, I believe it was probably Shermerville. Shermerville at that time. And Shermerville. Little plug, right? Was the first mayor and was mayor for 20 years. So I think if you're thinking about the development of our community from the standpoint of its organization and its government, we'll hear some interesting things. And Herman was also with the fire department for 46 years. I thought maybe you'd wear your fire uniform.
Since I broke my back in 2 places at a fall, I don't wear any fireman clothes anymore. I fell from the 2nd story in the burning house to the basement, and they crushed my 5th vertebra and my 2nd. I was trying to make it 50 years, but I decided to better quit while I was still alive.
Oh, boy. And our third guest, I think you all know, is Lee Schenleberg. And he, again, is from a background in a family, I guess just great-great-grandfather, right? But that goes back, came from Germany, and that goes back to sometime in the 1830s. His family settled on the west side of Sanders Road. And Lee was with the post office for 38 years, so I guess that's the major, again, Lee has many interests and many accomplishments. And the one that we've appreciated the most recently is for the last few years he's been historian for the Historic Society. And his fantastic memory of many details around the community, and we owe Lee the fine picture collection that's taken him many years to accumulate. start over and let you chat a little bit. And at any point along, why don't you just interrupt if you have a question about something they're talking about, or then we'll, if it gets a little slow, you don't have things to talk too long about, we'll have plenty of questions from the group, I'm sure, if you.
Tom, could you move your podium over a tiny bit? Louis is hiding
Let's
behind
just get
it.
this out of the way.
Thank you.
Louis?
What do you want to know? What do you look for?
Why, I'd like, when you said Indian Clark, tell us a little bit about that early farm. It's not a history to start with.
Indian Clark was the first white man in this area. He got here, or he came through this area back in the 30s when he carried mail from Chicago to Milwaukee. And he ultimately settled where the snuggery was. And when the land became available from the government, he actually took out to buy about 120 acres, but he didn't have any money. So he had a backer by the name of Scammons, who was actually the fellow that my great-grandfather bought. But Scammons was, and there were a lot of guys that bought land that didn't have money, they just took a deed to it and got somebody to back them, pay the government, and came on a percentage deal. So my grandfather wound up, bought it from Clark from Scammons, Ontario Clark, in 1853 and built the place.
Now, how much an acre?
I can't tell you that. I really can't tell you.
Originally the government was $1.25 an acre.
Yeah, that was
But,
the original.
This section down here where Glenbrook High School is, I think was sold in 1845, 46, somewhere in that vicinity for $1.45 an acre. So,
Probably.
yeah, inflation.
Yeah, because one of the fellows that owned the 60 acres that the Wayside Farm was on, he bought it, and he bought it for $1.25, and later, or 25 cents, and later he sold it for $5.65 an acre. About 10 years, something like that.
Far cry from what it is today, right?
Right.
Far cry from the salary of what is today.
Yeah. My great-grandfather bought land on, well, it's from Long Waller Avenue, from Finkston Road to Western Avenue. It was 40 acres, and he also bought 10 acres up at where Northbrook Court is now. He paid $385 for it, to 50 acres. And when he passed away, and then when my great-grandmother passed away, then my grandfather bought 10 acres from the estate for $750. And that was from 1854 to about 1880, I think it was. I think the farmhouse was built in 78 or 79. And my great-grandmother died in 79, so that's when he bought the 10 acres for $750. That's really inflation, isn't it?
Well, they saw him coming.
Yeah.
Was that Levi?
Levi. Yep. That was my grandfather.
That was your grandfather, I know that.
Louis, in the farming days, what was the agricultural activity here around here that made you live on?
Milk. Most of the farmers milked cows and shipped milk to Chicago. About where at the depot is now is what they call the milk stand, and that's where the farmers delivered the milk, and the milk train came at about 9 o'clock in the morning. And it was all milk was in 8-gallon cans. My grandfather and my dad shipped milk. My dad quit shipping milk in 25. I don't know what else they raised, potatoes. Of course, my grandfather, he had the first milk route in Northbrook that he started about 100 years ago now, because my dad said he peddled milk in town when he was 10 years old, and that would make about 1889. They hauled it into town on a 8-gallon can and poured that into they had a 2-quart measure or a gallon measure, and the woman, the housewife, went out to the wagon with a utensil to carry the milk into the house. Boy, the health department would have a conniption. But that, he did that for the surplus. The surplus milk went to the Deerfield Creamery, which he was in Deerfield, just about a block or 2 blocks south of the depot. And I have a bill from Deerfield Creamery for my grandfather's milk for 1 month. That was $24 and some cents, and it was signed by a man by the name of John Wilmot, who was obviously one of the reasons that they named Wilmot Road after. But he also sold potatoes. He planted a lot of potatoes, and he sold those. Matter of fact, he even had where the toll road is, he had a orchard, and he used to sell apples in a gunny sack, 90 pounds for 15 cents a bag. They didn't spray them or anything. I mean, they were. It's about 40 years ago, before the toll road went through, there was still a stub of one of those trees, and I had a crummy apple off of one of those that was still left from way back.
Herman, why don't you mention a little bit about the evolution of the businesses that you've had? I thought that's fascinating thing when they made, what some of the early, what you're doing today.
Well, my great-grandfather, of course, came over here from the Alsace-Lorraine region between France and Germany in 1842. And he built a wagon shop where the garage is today. And he bought 45 acres of land on the corner of Shermer and Techney, on the southeast corner. And over the years, my dad was selling it off. Well, the first part he sold, I think he got 500 an acre. And the last 8 acres he sold for, I think he got $8,000. Anyway, he thought that was a terrific deal. And the last 8 acres was sold to a business corporation for $3.5 million.
Per acre?
For 8 acres, right in the corner of Shermer. $3.5 million. So it's unreal prices that we're having today. But talking about milk, I got fired from my first job on the counter milk. I used to carry the mail from the post office over to the depot in a mail bag. I went hanging on a pole that was sitting there. And most of the trains wouldn't stop, but an arm would come out and grab the mail bag, and away it went. So I was wheeling this 2-wheel cart over there one day, and I bumped some of the milk cans that were standing there, and 4 of them rolled on the track, and the train come along and squashed all the cans of milk, so I got fired.
And the original business was wagons?
We build wagons and carriages and shoot horses. We've done that, must have done that for almost 50 years. And then my grandfather, of course, when he grew up, he was the mayor for the first 20 years. He also built and paid for the first village hall and fire station out of his own pocket, which was also on the land next to the garage that the village took away from us for 10 cents on the dollar. They donated the 40 feet to the park that they didn't use. And they put the road through, and they also took the land all the way up to the building, which now I have to pay $25 a year, $2,500 a year just to park there. They stole the land. Right of eminent domain is the unfairest law in the United States today. There was an article in the Reader's Digest about a year ago. They can take anything you have, your home, your business, any property that they want, and pay you anything, 10 cents on the dollar. It costs us how much to move our house out of there, that's what they paid us for. That piece of ground today is worth $1 million, and we got peanuts for it. But since the village has found out we are the oldest family-owned business in the United States today, they kind of backed off. I don't know if they're afraid of a lawsuit or what they are, but they're sort of leaving me alone. But it was established a while back that we were the oldest in Illinois, and then they checked further and found out we're the oldest in the United States. And we've gotten letters from all over the country, and newspaper articles, and magazine articles, going out to send us a $1,500 fan belt assortment that we sell, fan belt sell parts.
Is that any kind of business or shop business, I mean?
Shop business.
Shop
Yeah.
business. Oh, shop, huh?
Well, it was a wagon shop for many years, but any kind of family-owned shop. We're the oldest in the United States today, 150 years.
Wow.
What was the first automobiles you sold?
We sold Fords, Studebakers, Dodges, you name it. In 1912, I got an advertisement hanging in the garage advertising Studebaker, and then also the Ford, $269 for it.
Did you have any competition?
No, there was no. They had to teach everybody to drive a car, and these farmers would get into a car, and my grandfather told them to stop, and they'd start pulling on a wheel and yelling, "Oh!" They couldn't get used to the fact that they had to step on the brake, so everybody who bought a car, the first thing you had to do was teach them how to drive.
Herman, did your dad sell automobiles?
Oldsmobiles weren't made in those days. That was called Oakland. They changed the name to Oldsmobile later on, but the first Oldsmobiles were called Oakland. I have a whole bunch of old metal signs and the Oakland name on it, and a lot of the old cars that are not made anymore. In fact, some newspapers going to come in and take pictures of it in a week or two, because there just aren't any of those old signs left. In fact, Standard Oil came out and wanted to take a red crown sign, big round sign that I got on the wall, and an old barrel, a metal barrel that we sold gas out of, and said it was theirs. I told him, I said, if you touch that barrel of the sign, I'll break your flag. But that's been here 100 years, and you kind of tell me it's yours? So they backed off. But, every business used to sell. Wallace, I bet your grandfather sold gas in back of the grocery store. Everybody had.
I stole gas in back of the.
Right, everybody had like a 100-gallon tank or even less than that, and a 5-gallon can, and you would pour the gas into a can and carry it out the street with a funnel and pour it in the car. But the gas tanks only held, like Ford held at 9 gallons, and you take a 5-gallon can, you just about fill everybody's tank. So we used to sell gas in the middle of Sherman Avenue.
And you got the gas from the tanks off the tracks, isn't that where it came from?
They would bring the gas out with a team of horses. I've got the old tank wagon that they used to bring gas out, and I borrowed it at the Standard Oil once to make a commercial. But they were asking me again. I'll tell them to go to hell. They'll want to keep it. Just take that sign up the wall. My God, it's been hanging there 100 years. I'm up there. I don't even know how they knew about it. It's unreal.
For many years on the farm, I had a gas pump that I got from Gene Cooksey. It was made by the Wayne Pump Company. And it was the only one I ever saw like it. You could do two things with it. You had a lever up at the top, you turned it, you cranked out at 1 gallon at a time. It either went out by a hose, or at the side of the thing was a spigot that you could fill a gallon can with the thing. And all you had to do was just turn it. You go from either one or the other. And I had that thing, and it finally went to pieces because the rubber gasket, or leather gasket, in the valve went to pot, and there was no place in the world that you could find the gasket. Matter of fact, I sold the pump on the auction.
Should have kept it.
Yeah.
My My dad sold Louis' dad his first car, a Dodge. I still remember this. Coming down Shermer Avenue, he crossed the tracks when the train was coming and chopped the front end off. He took off the bumper, the headlights, and the radiator. But his dad didn't get hurt, I don't think.
No.
But I still remember the car standing there in the middle of
There was a
Shermer
lot,
Avenue.
there was a lot more to that than just that, because what you don't know today was at that time, there were 4 railroad tracks in Northbrook. There was a switch track on both sides, and all the produce or all the products that people needed in Chicago and Northbrook came out by freight. Came out in the way freight in the morning. That would switch cars and stuff in there with a steam. This was the morning, and my dad stopped, and the guy, the man that was up in the tower that run the gates, he knew that the switching car trail was in the back by the depot, so he motioned for my father to come ahead. And my dad started ahead while he seen the fryer was coming through. He stopped, and the only thing that hit the car was the seats, or the steps from the coaches. Hit the front of the car, and the car stood on one spoke. He had the brake on, and it stood there on one spoke, and when he started the car, it ran to go ahead, and the whole thing fell down, and I got the spoke hanging in my garage, because that was something to save my dad's life, and my grandfather was sitting in the car too. It was an election morning in April of 1922.
Herman, what about your racers?
The race cars?
Race cars.
Well, I got a good story about that. I built a race car out of a Model T. Shermer Avenue wasn't paved in those days, it was just mud from one end to the other. And one day I'm flying down Shermer Avenue, testing it out because we had a race coming up in Valentine. And I hit a rut, and the rut knocked the gas line off and started squirting gas on the manifold, and the car caught on fire. So I jumped out and let her go. Well, I run across Judge Gloss's front yard, bumped into a bunch of lilac trees and burned his lilacs down. So I got home from high school, and the next day my car was gone. I never did find out. I wish that car would be worth a fortune today if I had it. But my dad never told me, and neither did my mother. He just got rid of it. I guess he thought I was going to break my neck. That was the end of my racing days.
That was what year?
Oh, God. I was in high school, and I'm in my 80s, so you figured out it's 60-some years.
Lee, I don't ever remember you telling us too much about the post office. All the things that happened over the years, that much, I'll bet they were interesting.
Yes. Everybody within a mile of the post office had to go to the post office to get their mail. There was no mail delivery, except on a rural route. After 1900, they started rural routes, and Ed Lambert was the mailman in Northbrook, and he retired in 1934 as a mailman, and he went out to the horse and buggy and delivered the mail. Well, in 1940, I took over that route. The mailman who had a car accident, so they asked me to take that route while he recuperated in the hospital. And I think I did in 2 hours what he used to do in all day.
Still going on.
Well, now it takes longer than that. But I had delivered mail. Well, as I say, I worked in the post office. Everybody within a mile of the post office had to come to the post office and get their mail. Of course, that's how I got to know all the people that lived in town. And then, when I delivered the rural route, I delivered far north as Lake Cook Road, and all the way down to Winnetka Avenue, through Northfield Township, and all the way out to Milwaukee Avenue, or Sanders Road, I'm sorry. Sanders Road, and down to as far as Lake Avenue in Glenview. And then in 1941, I went to Glenview and started working out of Glenview. So they said, hey, our rural carrier is going in service. Will you take over his job temporarily? Sure, so I did it. Well, I took over his route, and then I delivered the south end of the township, all the way down as far as Gulf Road. So, from 1936 to 1941, I delivered mail to every house from Gulf Road to Milwaukee, to Lake Cook Road, and from Sanders Road to Spooky Boulevard. Now I don't even know my own neighbors anymore.
You knew everybody in town
I
then.
knew everybody in town then, and who you dared talk about, to who. I knew all the relatives and everything else. But I ended up as a superintendent of the Naval Air Station Post Office, and I retired in 1974. But it's interesting to go now. Ed Landwehr's grandson or great-grandson, I don't know, sent us a pair of gloves that he wore when he was on the mail route. And he was secretary, Ed Landwehr was secretary to many organizations here in town. And he was secretary for the church that was on Dundee Road, right near Finkston Road. And this fella gave us the minute book and so forth with the Constitution and all that stuff from that church in 1851. And it was a church records from 1851 to 1877, I think, or something like that.
A little story on this Ed Landwehr. He started off with the horse and buggy, and eventually he decided to get a car, and he went to Des Plaines and bought, of all things, and I can still remember the thing, a Saxon. It was a little old line car, and he drove it from Des Plaines to Northbrook, and when he got to Northbrook, he called the guys back up in Des Plaines and said, fellas, you can get your car back, because he said, I can't make enough time out of that thing to cover the route. And they said, why? He says, well, it took me so many hours to get home, and he drove from Des Plaines to Northbrook in first. He used that car for quite a while, after he found out that it was gear shift.
What was the first ice wagon?
I'll tell you that. That's right.
What did you do for ice?
We help them out sometimes out of ice,
That's what I'm talking about.
Fritz Miller used to deliver ice by
That's
truck.
got to be out in the late 20s, he came, but that's Crystal Ice.
Highland Park used to have 2 ice companies.
Really, with that little section known as a katydid,
I can't tell you, Glenn.
a little,
It was just a little low-line car.
little two-passenger car.
That's
Wire
right.
wheels.
Tandem,
Right.
wasn't it?
We know it as a katydid. My uncle had one.
I know, it must be 1916 or something
Yeah,
like
well,
that.
that's
when
what
it
I
came
recall.
out.
Ed's brother Bill had a Saxon 6 touring car, 6-cylinder Saxon. But when Ed Landwehr delivered mail on a motorcycle for years, until the parcel post got too heavy. Then he started using a car. I never saw him drive a Saxon.
Oh, yeah. You can see it
I never
right.
saw it.
What kind of car did he sell? He sold cars.
He
One time.
He put up a sign once for Jeffries, and he sold, I think he sold a few Regals. But the sign for the Jeff, he and Bill sold the car load of Fords one time, there were 6 in that rig. There were 6 in that car. And they sold those. That was about 1914 or 15. They sold those. But before that, they had that carload of a Saxon. And Orville Keith had a Saxon. Oscar Miller was buying a Cornelia, and they couldn't make the delivery, so he bought a Saxon. he had that kit in 1922 or 23. He bought it about 1914 or 15. George Sanders' sons had each a two-up room out on that block. George Sanders, the bricklayer, two of his sons had Saxons.
What roads could they go down? If the roads were all mud, what roads could they use with it?
The roads are using now.
The mud,
they had
the roads on mud?
Stone,
Mud,
stone and even dumped some broken bricks from the brickyard on the roads to make them passable. In 1825, 26, when they paved the roads in Northbrook, we used to roller skate on the roads. And I had a pair, in fact, I think I still got them at home, a pair of Chicago Skate Company roller skates. You clamped on your shoes, and you ran until the tires fell off, and then you ran on the rims until you could afford to buy some more tires, some more wheels. But we roller skated all over town, one end of town to the other.
I roller skated to school for about 2 years or 3 years until I elevated to a bicycle.
We had
What year did they pave Waukegan Road?
1921.
That was the first paved road in this whole area, and I got pictures at home. On Sunday, everybody within the area had never rode on a paved road before. They all come down on Waukegan Road. And it was solid from Northbrook to Technic. It was old Dodges, Studebakers, Fords, everybody had an old car. It was a picture there.
He's got pictures.
Pictures back here.
Yeah. That's how it was on Waukegan Road, because that was the first paved road in this area. Nobody ever rode on a paved road before, so they all had to try it out.
And they didn't have any stoplights or anything.
No.
No.
Waukegan Road from Techney to Point Comfort in Deerfield was the first blacktop road in the United States. It was a real operation because they laid a cement road base down and put 4-inch curves on both sides and about 4 inches deep. And then they filled that with blacktop. They called asphalt. And all they did was brought it out there and dumped it out of a truck, and they had a whole raft of colored guys with rakes, and they leveled it. And they had a regular long edger that they pulled across the road onto 2 curves and leveled it off, went down the road, and then they had a steam roller packed it down. And that was the first blacktop road around, the first blacktop in the United States.
What year was that?
1921.
1925, they had a good road celebration in Northbrook, and they had more miles of paved streets in Northbrook per capita than any other town in the state of Illinois.
Did that because of Culligan?
No, Culligan was because of that.
That's right.
In 1921, they paved what is now known as 2440 Highway in Kansas, from Kansas City to Topeka. I helped grade it. 1920.
Talking about roads in Northbrook, this has to be about 1919. My parents were invited for Sunday dinner to his cousin, who was on a farm at Gulf Road and Milwaukee Avenue. It was a rather wet time, and when we got there, they had a real, what they call a thrash folder, and about another inch of rain came, and my dad still had cows, so we had to get home to milk, and he was leaving, and he said, if I can only get to Emil and Mary, which was my aunt and uncle, who lived on a farm which is now Glenbrook North High School. Because he said, if I could get to Emil and Mary, I'll get Joe, and we'll go home with the buggy. And we got to Aunt Mary and Uncle Emil's, and we put the car in the barn, and took Joe and hitched it up to a buggy, and came home, and came through Northbrook, and got home. And about Wednesday, when it dried up, we went and took his horse and buggy back to my uncle and went and got his car.
You know, I bet as a postman, you've heard a lot of rumors and scuttlebutt. You know, we talk about all the interesting things we did. What are some of the
things that you don't hear about. There must have been some scandals, and difficulties in our community.
No, not in Northbrook. Sure, no way.
What was the main road to the North Shore?
To where?
What was the main road from Northbrook to the North Shore, to the lake, Lake Michigan?
Dundee.
Dundee Road.
Dundee.
Wheeling Road, they call it then.
What do they call it?
Dundee Wheeling Road.
Mining.
Wheeling.
Wheeling.
Who was Black Dirt Miller?
He was our postmaster. Well, I tell you, Black Dirt Miller got the name Black Dirt Miller because he bought my father-in-law's father's farm out on Walter Avenue and Sanders Road and sold the black dirt off of it. For many years, he was Black Dirt Miller. That's where he got the black dirt from. That's beautiful dirt, too.
During the World's Fair in Chicago, they shipped a lot of black dirt down to landscape the World's Fair grounds.
His name was actually Fred. He became postmaster in Northbrook in the 1940s, I believe.
I remember one story about him, cost one guy's foot. In the middle of winter, down below zero, barn caught fire on his property. So we all hopped on the truck, which is an open truck, no cab, no nothing, just right out in the open. We're flying down Water Avenue and slide off the road into the ditch. Well, we're pushing and shoveling and pushing, and eventually we got it out. But by the time we got it out, the barn was burned down. And one of the fellows froze his foot so bad, it later had to be amputated. Lost the foot.
That was John Kling, he was driving Rudy's coal truck.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he never got a set of compensation for it.
His son-in-law's been working at times for Tom and Rich over here.
But we almost froze more than our feet, froze our rear end off. It was really cold out there.
You mentioned the church up on Dundee Road, on Kingston Road. Did you say that? I think you said that before.
There was a church, yeah,
Where was it located exactly?
right next to the cemetery.
Which cemetery?
I don't know what
That little cemetery?
that Blue Bay Cemetery on the south side.
South side.
North Union Cemetery.
South side.
Yeah,
South side?
yeah.
What was the name of the church?
It's the original St. Peter Church,
Yeah.
the first one.
Oh, yeah.
It, German United Calvinist, it had a name about that long. Yeah, even.
In fact, can't you still see the pump there?
Yeah, the pump is there.
The church was right there on that same site where
Yeah.
that cemetery still is?
Right where the cemetery is, just west of the cemetery.
Who maintains that cemetery?
The association, I don't know where they are located, I don't know.
That's not an active cemetery.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, is it?
Sure, oh, yeah. Yeah.
Still
Some of
sell-
us in Deerfield, I believe.
They're still selling lots in there. I think I had that question asked me the other day, but that was,
I don't know if they're selling lots in there, I know they are in the one farther west.
I think the Undertaker in Wheeling is in charge of
Oh, it is?
That church was, when was it, 1861, I think? when-
1851 is when they reorganized.
Yeah, they reorganized, but eventually, what, 2 or 3 years later, or whatever.
1863 is when they formed St. Peter Church.
Right, yeah.
And 1874 is when they closed that church.
Okay, in other words, it was closed in 1874. It
Yeah.
sat there as an empty building.
Is that the one that was at the west end of the cemetery on Dundee Road?
Yeah.
I was in that church a couple of times.
Anyway,
It's no longer in use.
That sit there, it sit there till about 1919 or 1920, when I walked out to my grandparents who lived on Sanders Road, and this church was still there. So I opened the door and went in and sat in there. Everything was the same as it was when they walked out of there. And there was only about probably 5 pews on 2 rows, And if you had a long-winded minister, you needed a chiropractor, because all it was this straight boards up like that. And it sat there for, I bet you 40 years before they finally, it was more than 40 years
Yeah.
before they took it down.
Yeah.
The congregation moved on to
St. Peter Church on Sherman.
Yeah. And another church, the congregation broke up three ways. Some of them went to Deerfield, some of them went to Wheeling, some of them went to St. Peter. Over the years, over about a 10-year span, 15-year span.
Yeah, St. Peter's Church, they started on fire twice. We put it out twice, and the third time we set it on fire, we got there, the whole thing, they poured gas all over, and there was no way of saving it. We saved it twice, but the third time it got away from some idiot set the place on fire 3 times. All those beautiful stained glass windows melted, and the church just nothing but a hole. Cemetery's still there. I got a lot of relatives buried there. The church is now never found out that today. I believe I killed him if I knew who it was.
Yeah.
Was it the old?
He started it about 2 years before that. He burnt a couple of hymnals on the altar. They went out. He burnt some books on a pew, in the front pew. That went out. And he set a fire in the basement where the choir robes were. He burned all them up. It burned a hole in the plaster and started blowing on the joists and went out. And nobody can tell you why it went out, but I was in there when all this was going on. I saw with my own eyes. Why it went out, nobody knew. Somebody put it out.
There's no chance to put it out.
No, that's right.
The whole building was on fire. He must have poured gas all around it.
Did they have insurance at that time?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they
Yeah?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yes, they did. I can swear it. If I remember correctly, the amount was $57,000.
Could have been.
Oh, yeah.
Could have been. The only thing that was saved out of it was the bell. We got out of it.
It's a beautiful old church. They even used it in the advertisement on Sunday. I got a newspaper article out of the Sunday paper where I guess it's Dean's Milk or somebody used the picture of the church as an advertisement.
What year did it burn down?
61.
Didn't that schoolhouse over, that they moved over to near the junior high, didn't that burn down about the same time? That long schoolhouse?
Oh, yeah. I guess it was about that.
They had a fire out down at the railroad station at about that same time too, I think.
Well, yeah, well, they claimed there was somebody in town that had a problem.
I kind of have an interest in not going back there, thinking in terms of how big the community was at various levels of time, and I know you studied that. And the other question I had is I hear about Bachtown, which preceded Shermerville, and I don't know much about that.
Well, I tell you, when Herman was born, I'm not dating you, Herman, the village of Shermerville at that time was about 350 people, I think, 360. Northbrook, or Shermerville, was incorporated in 1902, and they had to have a minimum of 300 people to incorporate the town. So they took in what they call Bachtown, which was a area built by the Illinois Brick Company for their workers. And they bought the land from John Bach, so they called it Bachtown. And there was, I think, 12 homes in there, 12 or 14 homes. And when they incorporated Northbrook, Shermerville, they had to take in that area in order to get the 300 people. The town, but that was a separate. I mean, that was wasn't really connected with the rest of town. So the downtown Northbrook, of course, was from Lee Road. I mean, the area, Northbrook area, that was incorporated was from Lee Road to Western Avenue, or a little bit west of Western Avenue, and from about Dundee Road to Illinois Road was a whole incorporated area in Northbrook. And I see in this thing here, it says, why was Northbrook changed? Why was the name changed to Shermanville to Northbrook? At the time of Prohibition, when Prohibition started, they had Bartlemy's Tavern was a saloon. There was a saloon over in the end here on Waukegan Road, on Sherman Road, right in this, where the Village Green Park is now. Across the street was another one. There was another one with a Cypress Inn. And there was another one down south of Walter Avenue on Sherman. So that was 5 taverns, 5 saloons. And with Prohibition coming on, they didn't want all these come out on a train and then they'd drink here and then sleep in this park out here. And when they started Prohibition, they said they wanted to change the name of the town so people couldn't find it. Because we wouldn't have any liquor here anyway. So Shermanville got changed to Northbrook. That was in 1923. Officially in 1924 is when they changed the school. They voted on 1923, and 1924 is when they really went to officially to Northbrook.
So we got quite an unsavory reputation. We wanted to change.
We sure did.
Well, I got a little different view on that. Back in those days, Shermanville sounded like a hip town, Shermanville. They wanted a modern name to upgrade the town, so they finally had a boat. And the North Branch of the Chicago River runs through Northbrook. So they came up with the name Northbrook. But it was mainly to erase the hip name of Shermanville. They wanted something modern. So that's how it happened.
That's right.
They got the name from the North Branch of Chicago, Northbrook.
You had that name Shermanville?
Yeah. Old man Shermer donated the land for the railroad to run through town. That was part of his farm. Chicago fire happened at that time, and they needed to rebuild a city, so they needed buildings of bricks. Well, Northbrook had the best clay in the area, so they built 3 brickyards. They run the railroad out here to haul the bricks to Chicago. And old man Sherman donated the land to run through his farm, so they called it Sherman. But they forgot that, and they changed the name to Northbrook.
Did they have a contest to name it Northbrook?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
What were some of the other ideas?
Oh, I don't remember that. All I remember is Northbrook. I remember they wanted to change it because they didn't like, they thought Shermanville sounded too big.
Wasn't it the same head landlord that suggested Northbrook?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
They sent out postcards to the people who lived in town and asked them to check off what town they want, what the new name was.
Most of the clay that came out of Northbrook for Chicago fire was where Annisburger is. The two brickyards up north of town, Illinois and the National, that didn't start until 1900.
Gone the years before that, all stick on back first.
Well,
Yeah.
whoever owned it, but it started because Gene Cooksey's father, Archie Vester's father, and a guy by the name of
grandfather.
Gus Fisher came out from the company and did all the testing to find out what, because that brick, clay was like veins in the ground. Because we tried it when the toll road went through, we had 7 acres back there, we were going to sell that for, across the railroad track from the clay. Well, we were going to sell that for fill, and when they took a test of that, they said it wasn't any good for them. So you just had to be in the right place.
The Illinois Brick Company started as Alsop Brick Company, who was, Alsop was my cousin's grandfather. Cousin's grandfather was his...
Hazel Alsop married Roy Box.
That's right.
Where were the brick kilns located? Where were the kilns, the brick kilns located?
They were underwriters' land.
We're under his
That's one, and then the other one was north of...
That's why you see those trees, smokestack. Where?
The clay hall at Illinois Brick was over 20 acres.
Is north of the county line.
We started filling up.
Filled up yet.
Yeah, that was at, Glenview was at Lake, West Lake and the railroad track. It was owned by a family by the name of Lutter.
Yeah, my uncle.
It was owned-
Everybody's related.
Sure you better not say.
They had 3 yards. They had one in Glenview, and then they had two in Chicago. They had 3 brick yards. Uncle Adolph and Uncle Henry.
So that employed a lot of the people in the area during those early
That's right,
years.
that's for
If
sure.
if it wasn't farming.
It was brickyard.
Tell us what you remember about Sky Harbor Airport.
Sky Harbor Airport, 1927. We started in 1927.
Yeah, right around in there.
On Finkston Road.
Where was the one that got that going?
Finkston Road and Dundee, a little bit west, Sky Harbor Industrial Park, I believe they call it now. In the late 20s and the early 30s, used to have air races out there, and in Glenview, they had a pylon down Glenview, they used to go around, circle around Glenview and Sky Harbor, and I don't remember where the circle was over there.
The races were from Glenview, they didn't have them here.
Oh, that's right, the air races, the endurance flyers were here in Northbrook. The endurance flyers were here in Northbrook, sure, at Hunter Brothers. Hunter Brothers were, I think they were up for 550 hours or something like that. And there was 2 brothers flew the plane, and 2 other brothers flew the refueling plane. They refueled in the air. And their sister Irene did the cooking. She cooked the meals that were sent up to them.
Yeah, and the youngest one, he did his damn plane down in a clay hole and buzzed around, didn't know where he was. Wow. Here, he takes a small plane and around that clay hole.
Got lost.
You can get lost.
Towards the brickyard, didn't
They, I think about a year or so later, that when they hit the record here, 554 hours, the one fellow got killed in another endurance flight down in Louisiana, I believe.
Well, you get darn tired.
These were local people that,
No, I don't know. I don't remember where the Hunter were from.
I don't know where they were from.
Yeah, the southern part of the state.
I got a picture at home, it's from the Chicago Times that showed them refueling in the air. 2 planes. They came down on a Sunday, if I remember correctly, and I was just a kid, so I got over there with another buddy of mine, and they had everything was fenced off. You couldn't get near the airplane. They had that in the hangar. And this friend of mine said, I know there's a back door to this thing. Maybe we can get in there. So we went around the back of the hangar, and sure enough, the door was open, so we went in. And the one plane, or the wheel on one of the airplanes was half flat, and the wing, you could move it up and down about that much on the end of it. And we walked around out there, we're like big shots, boy, we had a big time.
Remember any other questions,
Two
Beck?
planes hit over at the corner of Dundee and Kingston, the northeast, the southeast corner. 2 planes collided there one time.
Oh, yeah, that was on Ed Boat's farm.
Yeah, that was on Anderson's farm.
Shorty was a milk, he was our iceman from Deerfield, Shorty Johnson. They had an old World War I Jenny, and they were out riding. He went up with a pilot, and they hit 4-motor tri-motor.
No, they hit a swallow.
No, they did not.
It belonged to the Bird. Their name was Bird, and they were connected with the Mandel Brothers store in Chicago, and they lived in Ravinia.
Okay. The woman did.
that was the name of the airplane. A couple of questions back here in the back row. Yes?
What kind of planes did they use for this endurance?
Stinson.
Stinson, was it single engine Stinson or?
Mhm, yeah.
Sure was.
had any gypsies out here? Remember the gypsies at all?
Yeah, we sure did.
Tell us about them.
We stayed away from them, sure, that's what we could.
What about the?
Who the gypsies bring
There's a picture
with
of it.
them, though?
Look at it.
They did a-
Fortune tellers.
They did an awful good job with some of the wonderful things that they did.
Really? What did they do?
That's for God to know.
We did have a gypsy colony, though, for a while. Close by. Back row back there?
I lived in the area they call the Knolls. Somebody said that used to be a farm owned by somebody named Knoll. Is that true?
No,
No.
no, it was owned by a fellow by the name of Keast.
Over on Dundee, near Dundee and Western?
H. Keys.
Dundee and Finkston.
Yeah, Dundee, Finkston, and Western, it's surrounded by.
Well, yeah. There was the box in there, the Keast, I don't remember who.
Well, Jake East had the southwest, had the southeast corner there.
Oh, well, I was
His
told
old,
it was
his
Knoll,
house is still
Mr.
standing, so
Knoll.
it went west.
No.
You'll find the names of the owners on that map if you look there.
Lars Anderson bought a good deal of the, of Jake East farm. He had 85 acres of it.
Yeah.
He bought it he moved there in 1914.
Are there any other subjects that we'd like to raise then?
Were there any someone's on your grandfather?
All I know is what my father said, that Grandpa, when he went to school in the log cabin school here, and he said they'd seen Indians once in a while. But that was way in the 1850s when he went to school. There was Indians that lived up around where the snuggery was, up there on that hill.
Were they friendly Indians or were they?
I have no idea. I have no idea, Dorothy. Or I assume they were friendly.
My grandfather went to the same log cabin school Louis' grandfather went to. And he told me of the Indians coming to their log cabin begging for food. They were peaceful Indians. They didn't live right around here, but traveling through, they'd stop and ask for a handout of food. Their log cabin was between Shermer, Waukegan, and Dundee Road, behind where that log cabin school was.
Somebody set it afire.
Lee has made quite a study of the homes in Northbrook, and partly as a result of his experience, I guess, of many years delivering and knowing every house and address in the city. And I think if anyone has any particular questions about the history of the homes and the buildings, that you will find that Lee is an invaluable source of information. And probably
misinformation too.
Can probably tell you a lot about it, a lot more than anyone else knows, I'm sure.
I'm trying to find the firemen who came to the fire that I had next to me, the lot next to me in the early 1960s, and like to recall what it was. I'm on Christina Lane, and it was in the fall. The field was high with weeds, and we got the hose out and tried to diminish the fire, but we couldn't, and it overcame some of us. And I was just wondering whether there's any firemen that came to 1544, which is now 1544 Christina Lane, to the south of me. It was a horrible day for all of us. Some of us that can remember it, and some of us disappeared.
Would there have been any records?
What year do you think, what this was?
What?
What year?
1960.
In the early 1960s.
Oh.
I can't exactly remember which year.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have any record of the actual, they may have record of the fire, but that's about it. In the fire department archives, so they, how accurate they are, I don't know. When did you get out of the fire department?
Well, it's 5 years ago. I don't remember that very well.
I think we have time for a couple more questions, and then I think we'll make it informal and go on.
Visited with someone before we came here, and they were talking about the first farmhouse was at Ridge and Hillside. Is that true? That there's a home there now? They said that was the original home, and they're still living. That goes back to the first home. Sears? Sears?
Oh, no. No, the house, the oldest one I know in that area is the, on Shermer Road, about 923 Shermer, something like that. It's on the north side of Shermer. That is an old house. It's of course been remodeled. And the one across the street at 945 Shermer is another old farmhouse. They probably go back to about the 1890s. 1894, somewhere in that vicinity. That's the oldest one I know in that area. The oldest house I know of in Northbrook is on the corner of Cedar and Walter Avenue on the southeast side. It's painted a blue-gray. That's the original home I know of. That's, where's Rugen, Henry Rugen home?
Built in
Well, it's older
1911.
than that.
1911?
But it's, my mother was a Reuben, was a relative of hers.
The one in the corner, blue?
Yeah, right.
There was a second one.
No, one right in the corner, built in 1911.
1911?
Yeah, first one.
I had it older than that. I had it in
1911.
1911?
The old
Okay.
Walter House is still up there. Sherman.
Walter House,
Walter.
Yeah, 2324
I
Walters.
don't know what the number is, it stands
Yeah.
back a ways.
Yeah, there's parts of it that are still, I've been in that place and there's still the old timbers. And of course, our old farmhouse at 2424 Walter is the original.
That's the one,
It's painted yellow now.
yeah.
That goes back to about 1878 or 9. And my grandfather was married in 1878, and I think that they had moved into that house. That house was there before that.
I remember your grandfather real well. And, yeah, the building that we had there, that was built in 90, I think it was built around 1890. The one, where we sold the park. Of course, that was overhauled very soon.
Oh, yeah.
And the house on the corner of Church and Shermer, the southeast corner, that was built right around 1890. That was George Keith's house. We belonged to him. We bought out in 1889.
Well, it was Finkston. Such an interesting name.
That was it.
It must have been a local name, right?
Yeah.
Finkston and Finkston Road. Oh, she's in Finkston. So that
Named
was,
Finkston Road after her.
that was a farm family that lived in that area over there?
Yeah.
Finkston Road.
Where was the farm?
Finkston Road,
Well,
the west side road.
I don't know. What about Walters Avenue? Is it Walter or Walters?
It's Walters.
No, it should be Walter. No S on the name.
John
John
Walters. They got John Walters. John and
Someone added the S to it later on.
Henry Walters.
Same for Standard Road.
Yeah.
Standard, I know all the standards, and they did not have an S on their name.
No.
George and Charlie and Lawrence and Bill.
there was sand there.
Sand.
But that's where the name of the road came from.
They added the S to it later on.
How did they spell it?
S-A-S-A-S-E-R. Standard wasn't good.
In the,
Couple more questions here, over here.
You
said you'd tell us why there was a triangle.
Oh, I did, yeah.
That was advertised.
Why there was a triangle?
Because two roads. Village bought that triangle, I think for $100 a month. I think it belonged to a fellow by the name of Dan Cleaver, who had a big house right there. And of course, he's dead many years ago. But it was there, nobody could use it, so eventually the village bought it. I think
That was the first part.
They only paid a little over $100.
They didn't have to condemn that.
No. 1907.
When was the house built between Edwards Forest and Northbrook Auto Parts? On Sherman.
That was there when we came to town. When John Cutter Smith built that house, he was a stone cutter.
When did you come to town?
We came here in 1907.
1907? Okay.
But that house was there then.
If you look at the foundation, you know it's a stone cutter who built it. It's beautiful carved stones.
Getting up there, get up on the stone steps and they go that way and that way.
That's the benchmark on that.
Yeah, I know.
Stone cutters.
Somebody reconstructed the word, so it's school word. Benchmark. But they reconstructed it.
Can they answer the question about the triangle?
Oh, yeah.
What did they
What's
say?
the history of the triangle, where two streets came together?
Two streets came together at an angle and nothing they could do with it, so the village bought it for $115 from Dan Cleaner. They had a
Oh,
house.
no, that was part of Mrs. Bolton's property.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, Knockamus.
Knockamus.
Knockamus owned that.
Yeah, Knockamus. They bought it from
And
Knockamus.
Bill Randolph, the assessor, and he paid taxes on it for years without even realizing it.
That was the first Northbrook Park. The village bought that and gave it to the park district before they had a park district.
Well, that's why I put a flagpole there during the First World War.
Yeah.
When was the village green?
I have searched,
Armshine's Grove.
yeah, I researched this thing. The park district doesn't have any particulars on it at all. All their records, the one director threw all the records away. And there are no records of when it was bought or how much they paid for it.
Why don't they have a sign there saying Village Green Park?
Don't they?
Huh?
Up on Sherman Road?
When was the park district formed, when it became a formal organization? Was the park, the village green there before that?
No, well, the area was Bernstein's grave, road, we used to call it. Originally it was 10 acres here, and then they moved to the creek, and now it's only 9.5 acres.
So it was known originally by the city?
No, 1940s, I think, sometime that they bought it.
I always played baseball many years ago. I remember when I was a kid watching baseball.
Yeah, it's Bernstein's Grove.
It's called Armshine's Grove.
Yeah.
But when you go to other suburbs and there's the park there, they always list the name on a board, and there is no name for the main park of Northbrook.
Up to the park board. They should put a sign up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, the buildings are built across the street from there are called the Village Green Shopping Center.
Well, it's a park for the children, and it's a park district, a playground for the children.
You mentioned so many of these people were farmers. What kind of farms do they have? Dairy farm, vegetable
Dairy farms, most of them. Dairy farms until 1920, and then they started into truck farming. My grandfather was what you'd call a truck farmer. He raised, his main crops was garlic and onions. The Burmeisters raised horseradish. And my grandfather was also into other vegetables. It's a story about my grandfather. He loved to grow melons, watermelons and cantaloupe. Well, he had a field of watermelons, and somebody got into him and stole a bunch of his melons. But he was going down through the rows, he found a $10 bill, and that paid for the balance of it. This was back when you get a melon to be 45 cents or something, you know.
I used to pick onions when I was a kid, 35 cents a crate. And I had to ride my bicycle about 3 miles.
They let you come home.
So that's what Chicago area was. It was known, that's what Chicago means. Chicago means, in the Indian language, it means wild onion. And that is one of the wild plants that grew within the Chicago area before the 1600s.
During the First World War, my grandfather sold an awful lot of garlic and onions to the camp up at Fort Sheridan. Drive up there with a wagon load it, dump it off.
And they shouldn't do away with Fort Sheridan. They should keep it as a National Guard station.
John?
Some people don't remember that we had 2 railroads in Northbrook, and we've got the station agent from one of them.
Electric line.
Skokie Valley Route.
Yep.
She had cookies every Christmas.
For all of your passengers. Well, I think our official time is about up. I certainly would like to thank you all for coming. I think if you'd like to stay around, I'm sure that our guests will be happy to chat a little more about any question or anything that you may want to talk about, but I think we'll officially break. Edie, are there any other announcements or anything?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Was it delightful?